trust you all have not discussed the case among yourselves while you've been out. Is that correct? All right. I tried to start without you, but everybody would let me. Okay, Mr. Champion, you can call your next witness.
Keri Henson. Your Honor, both of our next witnesses have some back issues, so we're going to let them sit here.
All right. We've got a microphone for them, so
Yes, sir, right
should
there.
be no problem. All right. Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give involving this case is the truth, the truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, Mr. Champion.
What is your name?
Keri Henson,
And Keri, where do you live?
52A Old Highway 51, Portland.
And how long have you lived there?
I think about 7 years now. I moved to Oxford and then I came back, so about 7 years now.
And your mother, who is your mother?
Julia Chambers,
And where does Julia live?
52 Old Highway 51, right in front of me, so I stay behind her.
I believe y'all basically have two homes that are side by side, is that correct?
Yes, she's in the front.
Back on December the 6th of 2014, do you remember that day?
I do.
And were you at home?
I was.
And do you have children?
I have a daughter.
And was your daughter at your residence that evening, or was she over at your mother's?
She was at my mom.
And at some point, did your daughter do something that required y'all to call the Cortland Fire Department?
It was either my daughter or my niece.
Okay.
Yes.
Who's your niece?
Her name is Tanaya, and they're 6 months apart.
And how old's your daughter?
Right now she's 16.
She's been 12 at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did they do?
One of them put a slice of pizza in the microwave and left it in there a long time. So I think they put it like on 30 minutes or so and forgot about it. And it caused the microwave to almost burn, but it was really smoke.
They wanted it really hot, didn't they? And how did you learn about, was there smoke over at your mom's?
I think it was my sister, and I really can't remember if one of them came down to the house, but I do know that my sister arrived at the same time that it was happening. So that's, but I smelled it when my sister, I'm not sure who came first, if it was one of the kids or if it was my sister, because it was a long time ago. But you could smell it.
Did y'all call the fire department?
We did.
And did they respond?
They did.
And do you remember approximately what time you called the fire department?
Had to been close to around 7 o'clock. I know it was dark.
At that night?
Yeah, that night it was dark.
And did the fire department respond?
They did.
And you know, you live in Cortland, so the fire department's not real far from your house, is that right?
Correct.
And when they got there, were they able to find any kind of fire?
There was no fire.
Okay, and what did they do while they were there?
They got the fan out of the truck and they plugged it up to suck the smoke out the house.
Okay,
There was a lot of smoke.
Did that take very long?
No, probably almost 30 minutes, I would say.
So what time do you think they left your house? Or your
Around-
mom's house?
Yeah, around 7:30 probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, are you kin to Quentin Tellis?
Yes.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you point him out, please, and tell me what he's wearing?
He's wearing the blue shirt.
Your Honor, may the record reflect she's identified the defendant.
Record will so indicate.
And how are you and Kent and Quinn to each other? How are you and Quentin kin to each other?
His His grandmother and my great-grandmother were sisters.
So very distant, is that correct?
Yeah.
Do you have occasion to hang out with him or see him very often?
No.
Are you familiar with Otto Sanford subdivision?
Yes.
And where is that in relation to your house?
Across the main highway 51.
So if you leave your house and cross over 51, is Otto Sanford in that area?
Yes. Correct.
And did people call you from Otto Sanford that night checking on you?
I think someone called my sister's phone, but no one called me.
Okay. But there were people checking on y'all from Otto Sanford, is that correct?
Yes, I think someone did call her phone. I'm not sure.
Can you see your house from the Otto Sanford subdivision? Yeah, I remember it'll be December with no leaves.
Yeah. You may be able, depending on where you're standing, you may be able to see the very end of my trailer.
What about your mom's?
Yeah.
You can see that.
It depends on where you're standing and, the season.
And did Quentin Tellis ever come up to your house on the night of December 6th to check on you?
No.
Nothing further.
Cross.
Good afternoon,
Hi.
Ms. Keri. Let me see if I can clarify exactly the positioning of your house in relation to your mom's, okay? And you live at 52A Old Highway 51, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so that would mean that your mom's house is in front of your house,
Yes.
okay? And so the opposite of that is that you live behind her in a
Yes.
separate house.
Mm-hmm.
And on the day of the incident, basically it was just smoke that resulted from the microwave pizza incident, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so fire trucks, or one fire truck in particular, you recall that it pulled up in between where both of the trailers were.
So, there's some distance in between my home and my mom's home.
Yes.
So the driveway, we share the same driveway. So one of them, and I can't remember what kind, but I do know that there was a truck that pulled up and it was like in between our home, but not pulling directly in between, but to the side. I could see it.
Okay. And as far as the positioning of the other trucks, you don't recall that?
No.
I know you stated the relationship between yourself and Quentin. Tell it again. You said that you're related how?
His grandmother
Okay.
and my great-grandmother are sisters, were sisters.
Is Quentin someone that you talk to often?
No,
And did you see Quentin there that night?
no.
When's the last time you recall talking to him?
I don't know. I've never had a conversation with him.
Your mother's name is Julia. Okay. And you would spell that Julia.
Yes,
Okay. Is that what everybody calls her?
no.
Okay, what do they call her?
Julie.
Julie.
Mhm.
Okay. Does anybody call her Auntie Julie or? Okay.
No,
So, let me see if I can phrase this correctly. Well, is she, she's not Quentin's aunt, is she?
no.
And so, the way that you guys refer to your aunts in your family, Would you say Aunt Julie or Aunt someone else? How do you do that?
So my mom only has one sister, and her name is Patricia, and I call her Pat.
Okay. And as far as someone calling your sister's phone to check, do you have any more information about that?
No.
So you're not even sure about that?
I'm not sure, but I do know that my grandmother has a scanner, and I think that whoever called, maybe my grandmother, they called my grandmother to see what was going on or something. I really don't know.
Of course, indulge us just a moment. I attended the witness, Your Honor.
Cross, redirect, excuse me.
Just one question, all right? Ms. Palmer just asked you about what other relatives called your mom. Okay. Do you have any relatives on the west side of the tracks in Cortland, which would be down the road from your house?
Yes.
Okay. And who is that?
I have some older relatives.
Do you have any male relatives that are in the early to mid 20s?
No,
Okay, so you don't have anybody that should have been on that side of the tracks?
correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor. She may be finally excused.
All right, Ms. Henson, you're finally excused, ma'am. Thank you for coming. You may remain in the courtroom or you can leave. Thank you. You may call your next witness.
Julia Pittman. Excuse me, Julia Chambers.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give about this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. See your right hand.
Good afternoon, young lady. How are you doing?
All right.
What is your name?
Julia Chambers,
And Miss Chambers, where do you live?
52, Highway 51, Portland,
And how long have you lived there?
since 1987.
And what was you, at one time, did you have a profession?
Yes,
And what was that?
doing
You must-
hair.
Doing hair?
Mhm.
Were you told by your daughter or someone that the fire department was at your house on December the 6th, 2014?
Yes.
And what did you hear about your house?
When I made it home, my daughter told me my microwave had burned.
And I believe it was your granddaughter that had done it, right?
Yes.
Did you have a little chat with him?
Oh,
Okay. Did it do damage to your microwave?
burn it up, melt it down.
So I assume you had a real good talk with him.
Yes,
Do you know Quentin Tellis?
yes,
All right. Do you see him in the courtroom today?
yes.
So would you point him out and tell me what he's wearing?
Blue shirt.
Your Honor, my record reflects she's identified the defendant.
Record will reflect.
And is Quentin a relative of yours?
Yes.
And how is he related to you?
His mother, grandmother, and my grandmother are sisters.
Okay, so you are distantly related to him, is that
Right.
correct? And I hate to ask you this, because I know you're a young lady, but how old
59.
are you? And at some point in time in his life, has Quentin ever been to your house?
Maybe twice. When he was a little boy, probably a teenager.
Okay. And which would have been, would you agree with me, probably 8 to 10 years before, if I'm doing the math right, 8 to 10 years before your house, the fire department came out to your house?
Right.
Okay, so did he know where you lived?
Yes.
And you are roughly 30 years older than Quentin, is that right?
Yes.
Do you have, or does his mother, Becky, come over to your house?
Yes.
Okay. Has she been over there recently, or has it been a while?
No.
On the night that the fire department came to your house, did Quentin tell us ever show up to check on you?
I wasn't there.
Okay. Even after you got home?
No.
And did your daughters ever indicate to you that he had come by to check on you?
No.
Tender the witness, Your Honor.
Cross.
Poison buildings. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Miss Julie, your name is Julia.
Right.
And what do most people call you?
Julie.
Julie.
Mhm.
They've been calling you that for a while now?
Yes.
And I know you mentioned that Quentin is related to you through his grandmother and your grandmother or sisters.
His great-grandmother.
Great.
My grandmother.
Okay. Yes. So you wouldn't be his aunt.
No.
And by the time that you got home, everything was over, wasn't it?
Yes.
And so you didn't see him that night, correct?
No.
And as far as seeing Quentin at all, you haven't seen him in a long time, is that correct?
Right.
I attended the witness hearing.
Ready, Rick?
Just one question. Sir, would you agree with me that sometimes the younger generation will call the older generation aunt or cousin, even though that might not be the actual relationship?
Yes.
Nothing further.
All right.
You may be fine, excused.
Ms. Chambers, you're fine, excuse ma'am. Thank you for coming. You may remain in the courtroom if you'd like, or you may leave. Thank you. You may call your next witness.
Call Matthew Simon.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give involving this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Right over to that side.
What is your name?
Matthew Simon.
And Matthew, where are you employed?
I'm employed by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or better known as the ATF, in the Forensic Crime Lab in Atlanta, Georgia.
And how long have you been with the ATF?
A little over 10 years.
And what are your primary responsibilities with ATF?
My primary responsibility is to analyze forensic casework, either in explosives or in fire debris, and determine whether or not, specifically fire debris is to determine whether or not an ignitable liquid, something was added to a fire to help start the fire.
And would you give the jury, please, the benefit of your background, education, and training in order to do this, please?
I have a Bachelor's of Science degree where I majored in chemistry, minored in criminal justice from Grand Valley State University. It's a school outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. After that, I was hired on by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, where I worked for their state crime lab, where I spent about 8.5 years as both a drug chemist, and I was also trained as a fire debris chemist. After that, I joined on with ATF, went through ATF's training, brief training on fire debris analysis, also explosives analysis, and I've been working cases with them for, about a little over 10 years now.
Okay. Have you ever been accepted as an expert in the field of forensic chemistry in a court of law?
Yes, sir, I have.
Matter of fact, you've been accepted here in this courtroom, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I have.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender Mr. Simon as an expert in the field of forensic chemistry.
All right, defense care to voir dire Mr. Simon on his qualifications as expert as a forensic. Sir? No, Your Honor. All right, very well. The court will accept Mr. Simon as an expert in the field of forensic chemistry.
When you are asked to look at fire debris, we'll be specific to that, and you're asked to determine if there is, I guess for lack of a better word, an accelerant within the fire debris, what steps do you take to determine whether or what is it could potentially be in that fire debris?
The primary way that I analyze fire debris evidence, first of all, I want to just look at the evidence. Is it packaged properly? With fire debris evidence, it needs to be in a vapor-tight container, such as a metal paint can or a glass jar, because what I'm looking for in particular are what I call ignitable liquids, something like gasoline, something like diesel fuel, to where if I take a flame to it, like a lighter or something, it will catch on fire. The vapors from the liquids will catch on fire. Well, those materials are inherently volatile. They will essentially evaporate and will leave. So the evidence must be put into a vapor-tight container. Otherwise, the evidence those ignitable liquids could actually leave the evidence. So that's the first step, is just looking at the evidence. After that, the main thing I do is I hang a charcoal strip inside the can, and that way, and then I'd seal it back up. The can is put into an oven with mild temperature, so that way if there's anything in there that is volatile or will evaporate, any chemicals that are there, they'll kind of float up into that headspace of that can and stick to that charcoal strip. Most of the time when I'm dealing with fire debris evidence, I'm dealing with burnt carpet, burnt clothing, all kinds of really nasty stuff that's not really conducive to being able to just take it and put it on some of our really expensive instruments. So by using the charcoal strip, I can look for those volatile materials that might be there, and leave kind of the background material behind. So it stays in the oven overnight, and then I come in the next morning, remove the evidence from the oven, allow it to cool, and then I take the charcoal strip out and I put it into a vial with a little bit of a solvent to remove that. If there's anything sticking to that charcoal strip, it will remove it from the charcoal strip and put it into that liquid. That liquid then can be introduced to one of our instruments, a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, which can separate different chemicals as well as identify every individual chemicals that are there. In terms of fire debris, what I'm looking for most of the time is not only individual chemicals, but also patterns of different materials. So, was there gasoline, was there diesel fuel, something like that in the sample that I tested.
Now, does each material that you're looking for contain its own unique, on the gas chromatograph, will it contain its own unique, and I don't know if the right word is, sign or symbol for you to look at so you'll know what it is you're looking at?
Yes, there's our specific patterns that we're looking for. Different chemicals, different ratios of different types of chemicals. So when I'm looking at the pattern that I get, I basically get a chart with a bunch of lines, and what I'm looking for is something that kind of, I look at hundreds and thousands of these different patterns. So when I start looking at this, I can say, hey, all right, this looks like gasoline, which looks different than a charcoal starter, which looks different than diesel fuel. So sometimes I can actually identify what the material is. Most of the time, I can only identify what the class of the ignitable liquid is. For instance, if I had a charcoal starter that I would use to, light my barbecue or my grill, that might be the exact same product as a paint thinner. So in that instance, I can only say, hey, it was this type of ignitable liquid. I can't say it was a paint thinner or a mineral spirits. In terms of gasoline, it's pretty unique to where when I see that pattern, I know it had to have been gasoline.
Now, in this particular case, did you receive some evidence from Panola County, and were you asked to perform any tests on that evidence?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, and when did you receive it?
It's on a copy of my report
Here.
for a specific date, but I believe it was in December of, I'd have to look at it.
I would ask you to look at that report and tell me if you can identify it, please.
Yes, this is a copy of the report that I issued after my analysis.
And what date does it indicate that you received the evidence?
December 12th, 2014.
And were you asked to perform testing on those samples that you received?
Yes, sir, I was.
And more particularly, exhibit number 6, which was a partial bra, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you perform testing on the bra contained in exhibit 6?
Yes, sir, I did.
Now, I'm not going to have you go through it all again, but the testing that you just described to the jury, did you perform that on this particular piece of bra?
Yes, sir, I did. The bra or clothing items were in a metal can, and the exact thing that I just talked about, I did to this piece of evidence.
Okay. And as a result, on exhibit number 6, were you able to form an expert opinion whether or not there was a foreign substance on that particular piece of bra?
Yes, I was able to find, identified gasoline in that exhibit.
So gasoline was on that piece of bra.
Yes, sir.
Now, you were also asked to look at exhibits 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, which were other pieces of clothing that were submitted. Is that correct? And also, I believe, a lighter.
Yes, sir.
One piece was also a burned hair.
Yes, sir.
And then also you had a green blanket.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. Were you able to determine whether there were any foreign substances on any of those exhibits?
All the rest of those materials were negative for ignitable liquids.
Okay. So the piece of bra recovered from the scene did in fact have gasoline on it.
Yes, sir.
And is that to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would offer this as an exhibit to this witness's testimony.
Is that the report?
Yes, sir.
All right, any objection? None, Your Honor. I'll be so marked and admitted. Cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Salmon.
Afternoon.
You testified about the process that you go through to conduct your analysis of items that are sent to you.
Yes, sir.
Now, your analysis would be limited to that testing. Would you agree with that?
And this type of evidence, yes, sir, it
Right.
was.
You're not involved in the collection of any evidence, sir.
No, sir,
Would
I
you
was
agree
not.
with that? And you wouldn't be involved in determining the origin of anything that you tested, other than you can testify that you received it from a particular law enforcement agency. Would you agree with that?
Yes, sir, I agree.
Okay. So when you testified earlier that this piece of bra recovered from the scene, you don't know where that came from, do you?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay.
I get a label indicating where it came from, but I have no personal knowledge of it.
Certainly. So you tested a piece of bra.
Yes, sir.
Now explain to the jury, how could you make the determination that it was a piece of bra?
I looked at it as a piece of clothing physically consistent with a partially burned bra.
Okay. Do you recall how big this sample would have been?
No, sir, it's been 4 years. I've worked multiple cases. I don't remember.
And you're just relying there on your report, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you were conducting this analysis, you were analyzing items that you actually received from the Panola County Sheriff's Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Or
I'm sorry. I believe it was actually submitted, the individual that brought it to me was actually, I believe, from the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation.
from the MBI?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you still have your report there?
It's sitting right there. Yes, sir.
Does it indicate on that report who submitted those items for analysis?
I actually physically received them from Master Sergeant Jeff Farish.
Okay. And who is he with?
It says it's from the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation.
So it would have been from MBI then?
Yes, sir.
And your analysis determined that there was gasoline on that item, correct?
Yes, sir.
But now you actually tested multiple items
Correct.
during this. In total, how many items did you actually test?
So I have on here that it was, for this report, that it was 7 items, as well as a empty control jar that was used as a package to verify there was nothing in the container that they used. So 8 samples in all,
Eight
eight
samples.
pieces that I received.
And the control jar, there wasn't anything in there, I guess, to be tested.
No, it was just an empty jar, so that way, just to say that the jars that they used did not have anything that could have potentially contaminated the evidence.
And those would have also come from MBI?
That's who I received it from. I don't know where the ultimate origin of it was.
Certainly. And including the control jar, it would have
Correct.
come from MBI too, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And of those items that you tested, that bra was the only item that contained any ignitable liquids, I think, as you described it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Attend the witness, Your Honor.
Do the record.
No, sir, he may find the excuse.
All right. Thank you, sir,
Your
for
Honor.
coming. You're finally excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You may. We had originally planned to, the state had originally planned to schedule the field trip for this afternoon, but they don't, and I think it's a sound, good judgment not to take you all down there with the threat of rain in the area, and it looks like rain is imminent. We don't want you, we don't want you good people to get wet. So what we're going to do, weather's supposed to clear out. We're going to quit a little early today, and we're going to have a witness in the morning. Then we're going to go down to the scene and let you all see that. And we call it the field trip. So, but you'll be bused down there tomorrow, and we will begin that bright and early in the morning. So, again, I remind you of my instructions that I gave you yesterday, and I understand that you followed them to the letter, and thank you very much for that. And I will continue the same practice tonight, and so then with that, I will see you all bright and early in the morning. Please remember not to discuss the case among yourselves at this point. One thing I think I forgot to tell you in the beginning, if I told you this, forgive me, but all these exhibits that have been introduced, you'll be allowed to take those back to the witness room with you when you begin your deliberations. This is not a one-time shot that you're seeing it here in court. You'll be allowed to take those exhibits with you along with the instructions of law that I will give you. So with that, I will put you in recess for the evening. Thank you.